Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and welcome once again to the vast and ominous comic book vault. It's time for some brand new acquisitions. I've got 7 books this week, which is more than my usual, so I'm probably going to go through this a little bit more rapid fire than usual. We'll see what happens. First off, we're going to start with some Marvel books. I have quite a few Marvel this week, and we're going to start off with Captain America #1 by Rick Remender and John Romita Jr. The first thing I have to say is this is tonally really different from what Brubaker was doing, and if you really loved Brubaker and you were reading him for a good long time and you got really used to that kind of style of storytelling, you may not love this, or you may have a difficult time getting used to this. I think that this does take a little bit of getting used to it. It may take some time for some of us to get initiated with it. I gotta say that I wasn't immediately thrilled with the tone, and I think that it's just a personal taste issue. I think it's a good issue, but for my money, I kind of enjoyed more of the style of what Brubaker was doing for what little of his Captain America that I read. It feels very much like the guy who wrote 20+ issues of Venom in kind of, you know, doing Flash Thompson and reinventing Venom, writing Captain America, because, you know, that's what it is. And, of course, you know, he was great on Venom, and he's been great on other books, and so it makes a lot of sense. But it's got almost a horror twinge to it, and I don't know if that's going to continue, and if maybe that's just my first impression from this first issue, but it's gritty, it's darker, and it's like I said, a little bit of a horror twinge. So basically what happens in this, and the part that I latched onto the most, is the idea of Captain America trying to have more of a personal life. And Rick Remender seems to really love to do this with characters, where he does superhero stories, but he likes to really ground them in reality a little bit with how does the superhero life affect the personal life, and how do they deal with just trying to be a regular person while wearing a costume. Captain America really separates himself in this is Steve Rogers and Captain America, and he is Captain America all the time, 24/7, and, you know, he's got a girlfriend and she wants to marry him, and I really like this idea that she proposes to him because she doesn't think that he's ever going to get around to proposing to her, and he's got to deal here with maybe not being Captain America anymore, or at the very least having to figure out how he can do both. It's like he's never really thought about it before, and I really like that. He's trying to decide what's more important to him, his personal life or being Captain America. Toward the end of this, and I won't give away whom, but there's a character who kidnaps Captain America and wants to create new super soldiers and steal his blood, and that's all I'll say about that. Like I said, a bit of a gritty twinge, and John Romita's art goes real well with that. John Romita, not always my favorite artist, depending on what the story is being told. I really did like a lot of his work on the Avengers because I felt like it went really well with the stories that were being told there. This, I think, tonally, it's just not really grabbing me, but it probably will be great for folks that maybe weren't big fans of Brubaker or want to see Captain America done in kind of a different way. So I do definitely recommend this for people that maybe haven't been on Captain America for a while or want to see something new from Brubaker. I don't think it's my cup of tea, but I do think it was a good issue. I don't know if I'm going to keep on it or not. I may try the next issue and just see where it's going and see if the plot that's being told is enough to bring me through it. Captain America is not a character that I always read, that I always feel like I have to pick up, so I'm on the fence about it right now. Next up, Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate Comics, All New Spider-Man #17. This is mostly Miles Morales having to deal with being a soldier in a war, which is really interesting because, hey, he's 13, and the Avengers and, of course, you know, the United States are at war right now with Hydra, and Hydra has been going around and managing to recruit American soldiers, you know, recruit Americans to their cause, and it's turned into basically a big revolution, and they're preaching, you know, power for the people, and for the people by the people, that kind of thing. You had this really awkward moment, and not awkward in a bad way, where it seems like maybe Miles's father is on the fence about maybe joining them. I may have misinterpreted this scene, but given where he is at the end of this, I'm a little unsure about that, and if maybe he's going to consider joining Hydra. There's a really odd thing with Spider-Woman, where she is constantly on Miles's case, and he finally calls her on it. He says, you know, why are you always getting on me about stuff? And he seems to think that because of the way she's been treating him, that she knows more about him than he had previously realized, and that they have some sort of personal connection. I don't know where he made this leap in logic and how he got there, and maybe it's been planted and I haven't noticed it. But before, it always just seemed like, well, she didn't like that he was around because she is the other character with a spider motif, and she had a lot of reverence for Peter Parker, and that kind of thing. And now it's like it's supposed to be deeper than that, and I feel like Bendis is kind of jumping where I didn't make those connections. I don't know how Miles did. Again, maybe it's planted and I missed it. All in all, pretty good issue. I do really like this idea of a 13-year-old trying to, you know, with superpowers, trying to deal with this idea of, am I a superhero? Am I a soldier? What exactly is the difference? What does that mean? Am I in over my head? He's definitely got people telling him, hey, especially Spider-Woman, hey, you know, you're gonna die. You shouldn't be here. But he's got Captain America's blessing, and I think it's really fascinating, this idea that he got spider powers just before this war started. And at first I wasn't sure if I was going to like this crossover into this, but now I really do, because I'm really digging this idea that, you know, he was a superhero first, and then he just suddenly got thrown into a war because that sort of thing would happen, but he's just a kid. Anyway, pretty good issue. Really enjoyed that. Daredevil number 20. The best way I can describe this is just twisted, and I don't want to give anything away about it. I don't know how much I even want to say about this. At the end of last issue, Daredevil lost his head, literally. And yeah, his head is pulled off of his body by the Spot, or who he thinks is the Spot, now called the Coyote. There's some question about what happened with him since the last time we saw him, and I really dig this idea that the Spot is somehow or rather involved in this plot that's been going on to drive Matt Murdock insane. For a while we thought Matt was kind of crazy. We now have very good explanations with this issue, thank goodness, finally, for why people were thinking that Matt was crazy and how all those weird things happened, like his ex-wife just showing up from the psych ward at his house and then disappearing again, and the remains of his father's corpse winding up in his office, which put him at odds with Foggy Nelson, and Foggy is no longer calling him his friend. There are great explanations for all of that. As always, Wade does a great job of making, of using Matt's extra senses in really interesting ways, and you know, making it make a lot of sense of how he gets out of situations. I don't want to say anything else about it. This is bizarre, it's twisted, it's also still excellent storytelling, and pays a lot of things off that we've been waiting for a good 5-6 issues. So anyway, do yourself a favor, pick this up. I say it every time, it's because it's always been good. Next up, Minimum Carnage Omega. This is the one-shot that finishes off Minimum Carnage. I don't know exactly what I think of how this ends. There's a lot of really fun action in this. I feel like Carnage is finally taken out maybe a little bit too easily, although where he's left at the end is very interesting, and I like that the status quo is in kind of a different place at the end of this than it was at the beginning for Carnage. I really enjoy Carnage constantly calling Scarlet Spider and Flash Thompson is Venom, not Spider-Man and not Venom. I think that's hilarious, because this book has been very much about that, about how Scarlet Spider can't live up to Spider-Man, and about how the new Venom is not really Venom, and how the symbiote has been neutered and all of that. I think that's all really fun, and I like how Carnage picks up on it and makes a big deal out of it. We get to see a giant, huge Carnage in this, and we get to see tiny Venom and Scarlet Spider as they come back from the microverse, and for a while they're small until that wears off, and they have to fight Carnage that way. Meanwhile, Carnage has an entire army of those symbiotes that were created in the microverse. This is a really fun read, and like I said, I like a lot of things about it. More just action stuff, and I like where it's left at the end. I do think that the conclusion is maybe a little bit too easy, but if you've been reading that, of course, you definitely ought to finish it, and if you weren't sure where the end was, it's Minimum Carnage Omega, and that's a one-shot. Next up is, we're going to move over to IDW, and we've got Star Trek number 15. Now, once again, I pick this up here and there. I don't always keep this on my pull list because I found these stories to be a little bit hit and miss, but every now and again they will go back to an original series episode and obviously be doing something very different with it, and if it's one of my favorites, I have to know. Mirror Mirror is my favorite episode of the original series, could not pass this up, had to know, and it was really fun to see bearded Zachary Quinto Spock on the cover. This is fun. This issue is called Mirrored. It's the first part, and I didn't do any research to find out if they were just going to do this in 2 parts. I would be very surprised if it was only 2 parts, given what... Well, I was going to say what little we get here. We get plenty, but it feels like a bigger story than 2 issues. I hope it's longer than that. But anyway, basically, the idea here seems to be creating a mirror universe for the new continuity. I mean, this whole book has been, about going back to old episodes of the original series from, of course, the Prime continuity and doing them in the new, J.J. Abrams continuity. And here, what we're given is a mirror universe of the J.J. Abrams universe. Basically, what that means is that the mirror universe is changed by Nero's ships, showing up in the 23rd century in just like the regular Star Trek continuity is changed by that. And so you've got the Terran Empire, you've got Kirk with his big ambitions and lofty goals like he had in Mirror Mirror, and you've got Spock, who's more of the level-headed guy who doesn't have those ambitions and just thinks that the Terran Empire is logical, and all of this is very familiar from Mirror Mirror, but what's really cool is everything going on around it. We've got the Klingon Empire at war and almost being taken over by the Terran Empire. You've got Rurapente, because that's where Nero was supposed to be in the movie, which of course we get a mention of, and we actually see in deleted scenes if you look at that. Clearly, Johnson here has looked at those deleted scenes because the Klingons in this are wearing those helmets that we saw in the scene that didn't make the movie, and all of that is really neat. What's kind of weird about it, oh, and I also like the idea that we're given at the beginning of this, that maybe the mirror universe that we get in this is not the same mirror universe that we get in regular Star Trek, that there is that because of the timeline shift, there is another universe with the Terran Empire that it's similar to that, but it's a real mirror in events of the new Star Trek movie. I think that's all really cool. We get one scene in the regular universe at the beginning of this with Bones and Scotty kind of debating the finer points of alternate realities created by messing with time and timelines. And that kind of sets up this idea that I mentioned of maybe this is a different mirror universe than even the one that we're familiar with. And I think that's really cool. What I'm not sure about is if we're going to actually get any crossover into our universe in this, because so far there hasn't been any. It's very much like In a Mirror Darkly from Enterprise, and my only complaint about this is that so far it is too much like that episode. Not only, now, it might be later that they actually cross in if this is a longer story, of course I don't know, but so far you've got the fact that we haven't seen both of these universes cross yet. You've got the same thing that you had with Archer in A Mirror Darkly, where he finds this ship that came from a paradox that is more powerful than anything they've seen before, that he uses to try to take over the Terran Empire. Sound familiar? Kirk does exactly the same thing in this, and so it does seem to be borrowing a lot from In a Mirror Darkly. We'll see where that goes. I did really enjoy it, and man, I love the art in this. I think this is some of the best art in this whole series so far. A lot of fun. So I don't know, if you love Star Trek, I think you should consider picking that one up. Last thing for IDW is Judge Dredd #1. I got this really cool 90s-esque flashy cover that I just blinded myself with looking at. This was a pull box cover that you only got if you ordered it special, and the stores only got so many copies. So I was really fortunate to get this cover, and it was really cool. The book itself, I thought was a little bit lackluster. It's okay. I think that the writer here, it's let's see, it's Dwayne Swierczewski. I think that he has a good voice for Judge Dredd. I think he totally gets the Judge Dredd universe. But I thought that a lot of this book was just kind of getting people up to speed on who Judge Dredd is and how this universe works, and telling us all the stuff that if you've seen the Dredd movie that came out recently, you would know already, much less if you've read the comics. Things like you know, the Cursed Earth and the Lawgivers and how they work, you know, their guns, and that Judge Dredd is a fascist, and you know how all the things work in the philosophies and all those sorts of things in the universe. There are two stories in this. The first one is kind of a cliffhanger that seems like it's going to be wrapped up in the next issue, and then the second story is kind of this quick one and done thing that really didn't do a lot for me. I was much more interested in the first part of this. I thought that how the book dealt with AI and robotics and kind of the Asimovian kind of thing with the robots, and how, you know, they can't try to stop these thieves because they're programmed not to go up against customers, and these people started as customers and that sort of thing. That was kind of interesting, but I don't know. Ultimately, it seemed like this was more about introducing Judge Dredd to an American audience more than it was telling really interesting stories. It might get much more interesting later on. This begins... This actually isn't later Judge Dredd. It's not part of... well, it's apparently part of Judge Dredd canon, but... it's not taking place in the current history of Judge Dredd, because Judge Dredd goes in real time, starting from the year 2099 and then moving forward. So that's how it's done in Britain. So this actually starts in the year 2100. So it's like early Judge Dredd stories that were like never told, that sort of thing. It's okay. Kind of a lukewarm recommendation for me. I don't know that I'm going to stay on this one. Finally, Spawn number 225. I'm not going to say a whole lot about this. The cover... besides being the really fun Watchmen cover, at the top says Obama wins, and the reason that's there, not just to congratulate the president, is it's there because their whole plan with this was to have the election actually actually factor into the story, and at the end of this you see kind of how that is, although it seems very much like no matter who won, probably it would have been the same outcome of what happened story-wise. But basically we've got more exposition, as we have the last several, you know, numerous issues. A lot of people standing around talking about things, but more interesting revelations. Cogliostro's back. We're starting to get some background for where he's been and what's been going on there. There is a hint that maybe Al Simmons is going to factor into this again in some way here pretty soon. I don't know, but there's a bit of a hint of that. You've got a little bit more of what Clown is doing and how he's trying to manipulate Jim Downing, and you've got Jim Downing coming to a big realization, a big revelation that I thought he kind of came to issues ago. I mean, I guess it was, and that is whether or not he was actually the director of this terrible, you know, science experiment project. And it's been kind of batted back and forth. Was he this guy? Was he not this guy? Now it seems like he definitely is this guy. I don't know why it took so long to get here. Anyway, this is still extremely decompressed, but this was probably the best issue in the last 6 or 7. So anyway, that's everything for this week. Thanks as always for watching, and if there's anything you'd ever like to send me to review, you can always send things to our P.O. Box. and that's Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. Also, if you ever want to buy anything from the Comic Book Vault, I do have some auctions up on eBay right now from the Vault. You can go to wearegeeksnotnerds.com and click on the Comic Vault, and right there you'll see all the things that we have on eBay right now. I got some things going off on Saturday, so go check that out. Thanks as always for watching. Sure hope you enjoyed it. I'm Captain Logan, and happy reading.